To be completely honest, when we were getting ready to go in the studio for this one, I was still in the mindset of like, if we nail this one, we can make it. We can make it big because we've got Sugar Daddy Michael here paying for real recording software. This one's going to be real. Some small time label's going to hear it, and they're going to be like, "Hey, you guys want to sign $50 record deal?"
Which
I was
like
still like that mindset.
which wasn't technically impossible. It wasn't technically impossible. I think around that point, or we if some things, if we just gotten kind of fortunate, you never know. I remember. So two things that I always remember about when we got Altered States out. First off, this is the first time I ever saw people like repost MP3s of our songs on like shitty, like sketchy websites, like free download of Altered States Intense Reality. Like I'm like, okay, if people are trying to pirate it, then that's a good sign. And then
Yeah,
do you remember the whole fucking Fireworks magazine fiasco?
yeah. Paying for that. Did that ever get published?
I have no proof that it was. I have no proof that it was published.
Yeah,
They certainly took our money. Taylor and I were talking about this. Like, I'm okay putting them on
yeah.
blast because they scammed us.
Oh, 100%. Fuck Fireworks Magazine. Send us our like $200 back.
Yeah, well, because really, like, they were from the UK, so like what we were paying was in pounds, which the exchange rate was, not. I mean, it's not
Yeah, almost
horrible now, but it
double.
was probably not really that great back then either.
Yeah,
So everything was more
yeah.
expensive that we paid them, but we paid them, yeah, probably like $80 even just initially. And then we would have had to pay separately to actually have our copy of the mag. Like they wouldn't even mail us a like
Which
I
we
don't
never
know.
got. Yeah.
So
But like that is very much on point for like what our mindset was at the time because like we paid money for that magazine. I remember I was paying for to host like an actual website for the band at the time, and like
mhm.
we were all going like really hard in social media. Like I had social media accounts that were like specifically Intense Reality branded to just like promote stuff that was going on. Like that was definitely like full try hard mode. But I think what it ultimately comes down to is like there was definitely potential there. It could have like gone somewhere, but like we would have had to have like made the decision between like what each of us are working on, like especially you and I for like our undergrad degrees or the band. And
Yeah.
I chose my degree.
And I mean, in a way, I kind of did too. It's not like I was gonna
Yeah.
drop out. Like I couldn't have dropped out. There was just no way. I needed something. Um,
No, neither of us is going to do that. And I think that's really what the difference would be. Like in
yeah.
the alternate universe where it goes somewhere,
But
that would have been the
even
first step.
even if we just had a better plan for like being able to play live immediately around the time that the album was released, because the album comes out and we still didn't play live for like a year afterwards because we just didn't have any kind of shit figured out, right? Like we would have needed to come to that realization that you needed to play drums a year sooner to really have
But
been
like,
able
I
to
mean, that's the
capitalize.
thing, though. It still like kind of comes down to like university versus the band because it's like we still wanted to do shows, um, but it's like you got finals, you got all these assignments
Yeah.
and exams and stuff, and so you kind of like fall out of practice, and then by the time you have time again, then you waste all of that like getting back into like show condition, and then you're back into the exams and the assignments again. So it's
Yeah.
like we didn't have the time, especially because we're like long distance, long distancing all of this too, with everybody scattered across the province.
Yeah.
Like that's the
It's
thing. It's like we didn't have the time
yeah. We just
or
had
the
a
energy
lot.
to like stay on top of it.
Yeah, we had a lot working against us, unfortunately, and there was
Yeah,
no way around that. There's only so much more we could have done, but really, we were doing the best that we knew how to do at the time, and through the honestly the 20 to 15 to 2019 kind of time period, that is probably the most trying time for like the history of the band as a whole, and
mm-hmm.
like a lot of bands would not survive the conditions that we went through 2015 to 2019 with like losing members and restructuring and then losing member and then restructuring. Like a lot of bands would not survive that, and it is kind of a fucking miracle that it didn't end in 2019 entirely.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And it's also like even like with us saying all that, like oh, like we could have if we just doing a little more, try a little harder. It's like you look at the the big garage bands that like we know of, it's like they do it as like a full-time job, and they still get like $8 if they're lucky, or like get to open for like a C rank famous band. So it's just like it's hard as hell. The wrong industry.
No, and I mean a lot of them that, you know, they have deeper pockets, or they know somebody. Like my uncle is this in the industry or whatever, right? And we didn't really ever have that either. So I don't know. It's a right place, right time kind of thing. I'm always just grateful that we continued. But yeah, I think somewhere around that, like Altered States to Are We Still the Same time period, I think that for me too, it started to be like, okay, yeah, this is gonna be kind of like a forever like hobby side thing. You know, it's not gonna be this big crazy thing that pays the bills or whatever, but it is, you know, but it can still, you know, serve like a different kind of purpose.
Yeah, it's more for fun thing.
I also was pretty anti like outside songwriters and outside influence. I always wanted to have like 1,000% creative control, and a lot of those industry people are like then, you know, aligned with like teams of songwriters, and then like this is what's bopping with the kids these days, right? So then you get all this pressure to sound like something else, and then you lose all your, I always felt like you lose all your originality that way. You know, we wouldn't get some of the cool types of songs that we had if it was like, if somebody was doing that for us. Like we've designed a song for Intense Reality that's on this fucking brand or whatever, right? And it's like, fuck that. Like, I don't know.
I would love to see the alternate universe where you have to find your way in that world.
I don't know. It's probably not a universe where I would be a teacher or I'm married. I think it'd be a little bit more tumultuous. I think it'd be a little bit less stable, probably.
Well, that's the thing. Do you want a wife and future kids, or do you want a band?
Yeah. I don't know. See, I'm like both, but yeah.
Both is good.
And both is preferable, but you know, you have to temper your expectations for sure.
Just goes to show we pretty much recorded everything that we had.
That's true. Once again, kind of like Greatest Hits, there's not really any B-sides to this album. Get Out is a B-side, but like that's it.
We had one kind of jam with Alex called Get Out really quickly.
I remember that.
But yeah, that's the only other thing that was kind of like a B-side.
Yeah, that one had potential. I remember Get Out, but it kind of stagnated in like the chorus. Like it needed something changed because it didn't have flow to it. That's what I remember about Get Out.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, it was just like, it was almost more of a jam than a song, I think.
Yeah.
We self-recorded a version of Fat Lip by Sum 41 at that time too, for like a song for like a contest or something like that, and never got anything out of it.
On SoundCloud.
Yeah.
Posted on SoundCloud, yeah.
Yeah, so there's this like, there's some weird stuff from around that time too. Like there's a SoundCloud cover of Fat Lip. There's We Are One and Remember, which were recorded like kind of after, like a little bit separate from Greatest Hits. And then I can't remember if you and I posted our Dr. Jones cover on SoundCloud.
We did, yeah.
Yeah, but I think we kind of just did that as a joke. Because we were just like...
We posted it on April Fool's, I think.
Oh, yeah, okay, well then that makes sense.
And we just kept it up.
Maybe, yeah.
Guess what? We weren't kidding.
I think maybe we'd considered putting We Are One on this album, but then it was recorded like with completely different sound quality than the rest of these, so then I think we were like, no, never mind. We didn't get it out until 2016, but the version of it's from like 2014.
What is like your biggest like recording flaw or gaffe?
For me personally?
Or missing thing? Or just for anything on the album?
Sometimes my vocals, I think it's like we just use the first take or something. Like sometimes it sounds like I'm dehydrated, or there's a voice crack in like a couple of them, and that kind of bothers me.
That's fair.
And then it's very compressed, like it sounds kind of muddy at times.
Yeah.
And so I think it could have been panned better, compressed less, and then a lot of like for some reason that high end, like a lot of the songs, like the cymbals are way too loud compared to like the rest of the drum kind of escape. So
yeah, the overall mixing of a lot of stuff leaves you wanting.
It was just one of those things where it's like, was that enough where it needed to go into like the re-record territory? And I felt like no, like it's okay, it's still good enough, but it's not as good.
and that's exactly why I was like so neurotic with the re-records in December, because I was like, I know this is gonna bother me if I don't do it.
Yes, that's the thing, right? Because like, sorry, but like Arch Enemy, Downward Spiral, Midnight Drive pieces, they're not going to get a third or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like that's that's got to be, and like there's just not really even provision for us to do really any more at all now. Like with the 15 years comp and everything, I think things are just locked in as they are, and so Altered States is mostly at a passable level. At least like the songs that are on the comp, Break of Dawn, Cabin Fever, and Wait, like those are overall the better recordings from that album too, and they just happen to coincide with what we've identified with the most. And like even like the back half of the album, I think also mostly passed the mark in terms of like recording quality.
You just got to go full T Swift at some point and just redo it all.
I think the thing too is like, unlike Greatest Hits, where like Back to Square One, All Along, Nothing's Gonna Change, where like they were kind of like from like my solo albums and then brought to the band. There's nothing like that on this album. All the songs were like for Intense Reality, written with Intense Reality, like they're in the Intense Reality box. There's no crossover from like a solo album that I made. It was all like totally, so there's no other version of these songs. It's just ours.
Yeah, and I think even for the like the songs where like one of us wrote it and then brought it to the band, like I think they were all still like produced like, I'm making this song for the band.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we all like played on our demos. Do you remember that there was a full demo album of this before we brought it in?
Yeah, 100%, because that's what, what I was practicing to a lot of the time.
Yeah. So we had like a full prototype album that was meant to be like, okay, we're gonna take this and then we're just gonna do it in the studio. So like we were prepped that way, at least. Like we had solid demos that I think we all performed on the demos, which like I don't even think we really did that going forward actually, but I'm certain that it's like your bass on the demos and Taylor's guitar on the demos and then everything. It's like,
oh yeah, we put a lot of effort into those, whereas like nowadays it's just like, okay, somebody just ripped through a scratch track really quick.
Yeah. Or at least like if I'm making a demo, I've done all the instruments myself and then we figure it out after, right? But here it's like, no, you played bass on like, and so that's actually kind of cool. So like that kind of ties back to what you're talking about with us, at least kind of having like a master plan with it.
Yeah. Well, and it's nice like when we all do our own instruments for the demos too, because it's like the thing that comes to my mind is like when you do all the instruments for like a demo you're making, but it's like you play bass like a different way than I play it, but then it always feels like a little bit like, oh, like I'm not quite playing it the way that like the song was written, even though that's not necessarily the case. It's just you have a different playing style.
Yeah, all the little intricacies there.
I'd say the average song on this album is definitely better than the average song in Greatest Hits, because we played so many shows and did so much stuff with all the Greatest Hit songs. Like I almost hold them like higher in my mind just because we have like way more memories of like doing things with them, even though like these are better songs. Because I'm always like, oh, like this like sound quality, the production, like just the song cells, like they're all way better on this one. But when I'm getting nostalgia trips, it's usually for like a couple of things from Greatest Hits.
And then these ones, like, unfortunately, they're just in the wrong time period. Like they just didn't quite get a chance that like any of the other albums did, because by the time we were playing,
because we recorded an album and then I retired.